Welcome back to Inside City Hall. When it comes to our city's classroom, there's been plenty of change in 2014. From universal pre-kindergarten to teacher tenure to the debate over charter schools, education often dominated the headlines all throughout the year. And the charter school conversation will continue into next year as we continue to gauge the impact of their expansion. Joining me now to talk more about it, we've got a special panel of charter school leaders. Vasthi Acosta is the principal of the Amber Charter School in Harlem. Nanda is the executive director of Urban Dove Charter School. And Kyle Rosenkrans is the CEO of the Northeast Charter Schools Network, which serves both New York and Connecticut. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here. And I want to start with you, Kyle, because there's a lawsuit that I hadn't noticed. It doesn't really apply that much to, I guess, schools in New York City, although it would affect all of them.
That's right.
You have sued the state, saying that there's a fundamental misallocation of resources that starves charter schools of the resources that are needed to comply with the constitutional requirement to provide a sound and basic education. Is that true all throughout the state, including New York City, or is this just some of these upstate districts?
Yes, the variation, it does differ by region, but where we focused the lawsuit was where that disparity was the greatest, and where in Buffalo a charter student receives 60 cents on the dollar compared to a friend or a neighbor that goes to a district school. That disparity for a student who attends a charter school in private space here in New York City is about 75 cents on the dollar. The disparity is stark no matter where you go in this state, and so what we've asked the court to step in and to declare this scheme unconstitutional and to equalize funding between charter and district students.
Now, as I recall, when the charter law was passed in the late 1990s, this was part of there was a political compromise that if you want the charters, you're not going to get facilities funding. And I thought that was something that had been argued out and so forth. On what basis could a court step in and try to change that judgment?
Well, it's not about that. It's really about the fundamental principle that we should be funding all public school students equitably. And so if the reason to receive less funding just because you go to a charter school is fundamentally unfair, and we even have precedent here in New York with the CFE cases that say adequate facilities is a fundamental part of receiving a sound basic education in New York.
And have similar suits succeeded in other states as well?
They've been all over the map, frankly, and we think that the court precedent here in New York is very ripe for this.
Okay, so very interesting. So we're going to watch that develop. The suit was just filed a few weeks ago. Now, Mr. Nanda, you specialize in what are called overaged, undercredited students, meaning people who I guess are 19 years old.
Well, we actually go younger. So students who, in order to even apply to our school, you've got to be under 16.
Okay.
But you have to have done a year of high school, and you have to have less than 8 credits. So it's a subsection of that overage, undercredited population. And the reason we focused on these younger students is, while the DOE has a plethora of transfer schools for those 19-year-old kids who just need a few credits to be done, there are really no options for a 15 or 16-year-old kid who needs 35 credits.
Right.
But we already know he's off track. We know she's not going to graduate from high school, yet we wait 2 or 3 years and hope they stick around long enough to make it to a transfer school. So we've created the first school ever to exclusively address this population of student and give them an alternative early enough in their career where they can get back on track.
I was looking at the website, and there seemed to be a lot of sort of non-classroom enhancements, I guess, that are designed to get them in the building, the sports and the arts and so forth?
Yeah, so we have a sports-based youth development model. So all of the students in our school are placed on a team, and their team has a full-time coach, and they do 2 hours of sports-based youth development every day.
Wow.
This is outside the classroom. This is youth development work. This is sports, health, fitness, with the idea being around this population of student. The reason that they're not doing well in school primarily is engagement. It's not that they don't have the academic wherewithal to do the work. They're not stupid kids. These are great kids, but they're not engaged. So what we've decided is that before we create any academic silver bullet, we need to engage them, and they need to develop some serious life skills in order to do that. So we sacrifice quite a bit of classroom time in order to get them to a place where when they do come to English, they're ready to learn, they're focused, they're engaged, and they care about school. It's pretty unique.
I mean, where along the line, how do you do less classroom time and then make up 35 credits? I mean, how does that work?
That's a great question. So we're a transfer school, so we do trimesters instead of semesters, so we have more credits per year. We're a 3-year program. We have a extended day program, we have a Saturday program, we have a summer program, we have credit recovery. So we're doing a lot of academic interventions to help those kids get the credits that they need. But what we also understand is that a kid who's gone to high school, taken 11 credits and failed them all, is not going to come to our school, take 27 credits and pass them all. That's not, we're not that smart. So we got to get that kid some interventions that have less to do with academics and more to do with who they are, their life development, their skills, communication, teamwork, and leadership. And we understand the sacrifice early to get them those skills will pay off over the 3 years because they will actually start passing more of their classes. And that's what we're seeing in our first couple of years.
Now, Ms. Acosta, the Amber Charter Schools, the first Latino-led charter schools in the state. But at first I looked at it and I said, well, so there'll be a heavy emphasis on bilingual education, but it's much more than that. And it's not that, right?
Right, it's not that. What we do is we have Spanish as a foreign language. So every student learns Spanish. Every student gets Spanish as a subject, a core course for them.
And how has that worked?
It's worked wonderful. I'm on the other end of the spectrum with Jay. I have them very young, K to 5.
Yes.
And so by the time they leave, our graduates go into middle school and they have a solid foundation in Spanish. We don't say that they're going to be reading and writing the language, but they can definitely have a conversation. They have lots of vocabulary. They have sight words that they can read. And so that's a real solid foundation when they go into middle school and learn another.
And so what was missing? What led you to that particular curriculum to put in your school in Harlem?
I think the original intent was to have a dual language program, and Amber was supposed to be in Washington Heights, and as you know, Washington Heights is deeply Latino. We ended up, because of facilities issues, in Central Harlem, and then we ended up in East Harlem, and our population was not one that could really support a dual language program, and we didn't want to let go of that, of the Spanish, and so we converted into a foreign language program.
And now, interestingly enough, while in many cases the charter fights that we end up reporting on involve the union sort of saying, well, they don't have union rules and they're doing things a little differently, you have UFT contract
We're a
employees.
unionized charter school, and we've been unionized since the inception. The idea was to be unionized from the get-go. And we're one of the oldest charter schools in the state. We're 15 years old. We're going to celebrate our quinceañera. And we have one grievance in 15 years.
Wow.
So that's pretty remarkable.
How do you manage that?
I think we have a really wonderful relationship with our teachers, and it's an open communication, and our contract is very different. We have what's called a slender contract with the UFT, and it's 30 pages. If you compare it to other contracts, which are much larger. So I think that has been the key.
And how does, if a school wanted to have the slender contract, I assume that has to be agreed to by both sides?
Yes.
Okay, very interesting. We've got more to talk about with these folks. We're going to be back after a short break, so stay with us. Later on tonight, we're going to sit down with our Friday Reporters Roundtable to recap a busy week for both Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio. We're back in a minute.